Hello, and welcome to another exciting installment of To the Edge. This is a little different, as in, our whole set's different.
Welcome, Roland, to on location set here in beautiful North Smithfield, Rhode Island.
Mm-hmm.
We're in the home of Laurence O'Leary, who's a great actor. He played Sid in Blood Sugar Sid Ace, a movie that I'm proud enough to have directed, co-produced, and wrote the script. And Laurence has been kind enough to share his home with us for your show, Roland.
Yes, and I'm glad to have you back on the show as my co-host. Hasn't been the same without you.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Mike Messier's been busy with another film, and we'll be talking about that in a separate episode.
Great.
So, what do you want to tell us about Blood Sugar Sid Ace? I know that we've discussed it before in previous episodes, but in this new location, I feel like we should give it an extra oomph.
Blood Sugar Sid Ace was a project that I started writing in the summer of 2010. And it was a project that came out of realization that I really wanted to make a movie that could be filmed simply and powerfully using 4 actors in one location. As you might remember, Roland, I had another project going on that was really hitting a lot of stumbling blocks, a project that I had written and was trying to get produced. And make a long story short, that particular project was probably outside of my range. So I realized that as a writer, director, I had to really write for my means, and what that meant was what is at my fingertips, and what I know how to do is work with actors. I was teaching an acting class at the time that I'm still teaching, core acting. I know how to cast people, and I know how to work with actors, and I know how to work with my co-producer and friend Tim Labonte, who's usually my DP editor. So with all those ingredients, I set forth to write this script. And what I did particularly was, moving forward to October of 2010, I put all these poetry pieces and short plays and film scripts that hadn't been completed. I stretched them out on an octagon-shaped table that I had bought at a secondhand store.
I'm trying to picture that in my head right now.
This really strange octagon-shaped table, like, they have the Ultimate Fighter in an octagon. So this 8-sided table was dominating the living room of my apartment, and the World Series was going on in the background for about a week, and I had all these plays and poems and so forth stretched out on the table, my trusty computer, and I just compiled this story of my life into this, at the time, originally a 45-page script, and these characters just started emerging, Blood, Sugar, Sid, and Ace. Sid reflecting upon his life as a, lack of a better term, a tyrant, a failed artist, a guy who's kind of hit his breaking point. And in his last-ditch effort to reclaim his life, he creates Ace, who's a younger version of himself, and Ace is trying to recapture that magic that is life.
When I say tyrant, what would make him tyrannical?
Great question. He's a tyrant over his own sense of control. His vulnerability is expressed in tyrannical expression of, he wants to control everything. He wants to manipulate everything. He wants to be in charge. He wants to be the man.
Kind of like a little Napoleon.
Right. As many of us are, speaking for myself, you just have that alpha male control freak, characteristic, and you're trying to control things, and sometimes things are out of control. Basically, he's trying to play God, over his own domain, over other people's domain. So when Sid goes through this and he creates the other characters, they kind of come to life. And Ace, we start with Ace. Ace is his younger version of himself. Ace has that same fire, that same piss and vinegar in his system. Ace is a little more absorbent of abuse from Sid initially, and then as we see in the movie, he resists. Then we have Blood. Blood's a female character, played by Jamie Tennille. And Blood is the broken doll female, dysfunctional female that unfortunately a lot of guys will confront or encounter during their lives. Unfortunately, a lot of women, such as the Blood character, have been the victims of abuse in their lives, and this character kind of represents the female who's been taken advantage of, and she lashes back with aggression herself. Stacey Forbes over here plays Sugar. Sugar is the female light at the end of the tunnel. Sugar, in a way, could represent holiness, divinity, light, um, heaven, a sacred place manifested in the form of a character, a person, a woman who Sid/Ace is always trying to reach.
That's an interesting point of view. When you say that she's heavenly, would that be in contrast with Blood, who has these horrible experiences? Does that make her less heavenly?
Yeah, because Blood is
blood red.
Blood red, and Sugar is Snow White. Blood is the victim of abuse. Blood is the
so it's like her life is a living hell.
Yeah, she's been through so much, and as represented by the character, Blood at points has tried to kill herself through slashing her wrists, in a real practical sense. And unfortunately, these characters, in some regard, are based on real people. So I knew people that had gone through that, through cutting.
Who actually slit their wrists?
Yeah. So I've known people in that situation. As demented as it sounds, I've known people that have been through that.
So how much of your real life experience, what you've known from real life, was used for your story?
Well, about 80% of my life comes through in Blood Sugar Sid Ace. A good portion of it. Even when you say my own life, it's thoughts as well. I'm not as old as Sid. I mean, Sid, even the actor playing Sid, Lawrence, is younger than Sid.
Yeah, I noticed that his hair looks gray and probably had to dye it.
Yeah, we had Sid. We had Larry play Sid a good portion of his life older, because we wanted to have that end of the rope type of deal with Sid. So Sid's up there, and Sid is just, his life is just coming back to him. And when people have that expression that when you're dying, you're going back and you're reflecting upon your life, and your life's flashing before your eyes.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, so Sid's kind of going through that. And this poster, and our camera lady, our photographer of this poster, Stephanie Maiden Carey, did a great job right here in the same studio area that we're at here in North Smithfield, in Lawrence's home. She did a great job of working with these actors, photographing them for these still shots. My DP, director of photography, Tim Labonte, captured them on film for the movie. But for these still shots, Stephanie even, because she was on set for the movie as a camera lady, as a makeup lady, she knew what to do as a photographer for these still shots. And I think that you see the eyes of each of the three.
Yeah, it represents what they're thinking, what's going on in their minds.
Yeah.
At least to me it does.
Right, well, you're right. And even Jamie with her arms crossed is usually a sign of someone who's holding back emotion. Stacy Sugar has a more open-faced expression, more open-eyed.
No arms crossed.
No arms crossed. She's wearing, and we did the photographs so that Sid and Stacy, or Sugar, are wearing white with the black background, and then Blood and Ace are wearing black, or in this case dark gray, with a white background. So kind of creates that checkerboard feel, which is chess is the ultimate game of risk and manipulation. And
now he's at the end of his life, and here he looks a little crazy. So
right,
he's a bit crazy. So has he mellowed as he got older, or has he become more jaded? What's the aging process in his mind?
He becomes more jaded, and
like he just doesn't care anymore.
Well, he does care. He does care to the point where Ace is fighting for his freedom. Ace, the character of Ace, is fighting for his freedom away from Sid. And these two guys, as actors, raised the stakes quite a bit. I saw their process over the summer of 2011, and they were spending a lot of time together as friends and as colleagues in this movie, but even to the point where I could see that as people, they were getting aggressive, in their minds, and just their bodies. When I would spend time with them off set to talk about the characters, or even just as friends, I could see that these characters of Sid and Ace were encapsulating these guys.
Were they still in character even off camera?
To a bit. I'm proud of them that they went there, because those guys had to experience a lot of the stuff in my head. They really had to take a tour through the roller coaster that is my mind in order to inhabit these characters. And I give props to those guys for doing that, and Stacy and Jamie as the actresses, because my mind can be a dangerous place. You know, you don't always want to reside in there. It's a nice place to visit, but you wouldn't want to live there. And everybody really took that challenge on. You know.
I want to backtrack a bit now.
Sure.
Was it difficult to find actors and actresses to play these roles?
We had two auditions. The first audition, Stacy Sugar and Sid, Laurence O'Leary's Sid, were able to get their roles pretty quickly in the first audition. And every time you have an audition, you're going to have different people coming at the characters from different ways. We had some good people going for both Sugar and Sid, but ultimately these actors are really the people I wanted to work with. They're just right for the roles.
Right.
You know, it's not an insult to the other actors that auditioned and didn't get the roles.
You just have a very specific idea of what you want.
Not really.
Right.
For this particular thing, sometimes in a script it'll say, you know, African American, 6'3", 250 pounds, and then you find that actor, and then bam, that's it. For this, it was a little open face. It was more like when they come in, and when you match up the dialogue with the actor, what fits. I wasn't looking for a predisposition of physical characteristics.
So it's more like the delivery, right?
Yeah, the delivery and just the gut instinct that I had to have. The curious thing with Adam Bucksbaum was a great actor. His audition for Ace, I think I did myself a disservice because I had, in one day, I think it was February 2011, we auditioned about 20 or 30 people for 4 roles. And that was just too much for me to handle as my own casting director, because Adam's talents really were overlooked by myself, because I got so much was percolating in the mind with 4 different roles of huge significance that I didn't really see Adam's talents at the time. But we had a second audition, and also for the Blood character, we really, no offense to the actresses who came out for the Blood the first time, but we didn't really have what we needed for Blood. We really needed someone who was a stick of dynamite, and Jamie wasn't, due to her schedule, wasn't able to audition for us for the first audition for Blood. So luckily we had a second audition, and we actually did a process that was very unusual as far as I know. I opened the floodgates to any actor that wanted to audition for us at the second audition. Once Laurence and Stacy have been cast in their roles, I opened the door for any actor to come rehearse with us before the audition, if that makes any sense.
To see how they play off the other actors.
Right, because once we got our Stacey Forbes, Iwanicki, and Laurence O'Leary as Sugar and Sid, their chemistry with new actors playing Blood and Ace had to be right on target. So the idea was, if you're willing to put the time in, come up to North Smithfield to our rehearsal spot and see what happens and work with our cast actors, then we'll do that for you. And of all the actors that have the opportunity, I think it was 4 took us up on that. And the first group of 2 was in fact Jamie and Adam. So they put the time in, and we had another pair of great actors come in and do the same thing. But Adam and Jamie and Stacy and Larry, once they did that, we were right here in the same venue. We call it the Acting Dojo upstairs.
I've heard of that.
Yeah. Once we did that, I was watching like, oh man, I can just cancel this audition in a couple of days, because I pretty much got what I need. I got my cast, but I had already put the casting call out. I had already rented the venue, our familiar Brooklyn Coffee and Tea House in Providence. So we went through the process. We went through the role play of having the audition anyway. But the 4 of them came together, and it was a magical thing. So it's cool when you can get your cast together relatively easily.
Now, from a technical end, how long did it take you to shoot this? From what I understand, you shot during weekends.
Yeah, we shot in the weekends of summer of 2011. We had, I believe we shot 7 days total. And for some of the actors, for instance, Stacy as Sugar, we needed her for 6 out of 7 days. And Jamie as Blood, we needed her for 5 out of 7 days. It stretched out a little bit longer than I would have preferred just because of scheduling, which is always tough when you have 9 or 10 people that need to be at the same place at the same time in Olneyville, Rhode Island, where our studio was. But I think everyone came together and bridged their schedules, making sacrifices, and we were able to shoot 7 days over 2 months.
How long was the typical shooting day?
Maybe 8 to 10 hours, between lunch and bathroom breaks and setup time. I think we typically started at 11 or 12, 11 a.m. or 12 noon, and went to 7 or 8 at night. And I had the easiest job of anybody because I wasn't in front of the cameras. I wasn't behind the camera. My DP editor, Tim Labonte, great guy, he had to hold this apparatus to hold the camera, just probably 20, 25 pounds at least, with the camera with his hand, and just our boom mic operator, Billy Boom Mic, we call him, holding the boom mic over his head and just sweat, just coming down, and I'm kicking back, just watching the magic happen, enjoying myself, and occasionally making some adjustments, but not even a whole lot of that. Pretty much, when it came down to directing the movie, my job was to buy the sandwiches, like in the morning to provide actors with something to eat.
Sounds easy.
It was easy enough. I mean, I just really enjoyed the process, and the rehearsal process was tough. It was a challenge for everybody just because of scheduling, but once we got down to work, and we usually worked on Wednesday nights, that was a lot of fun too, to see these characters develop, the actors learning their lines, everybody gelling. It was quite a family of people coming together, and then that family just expanded when we got on set. We had our makeup ladies, Stephanie, Candace, Bonnie, and another young lady. I'm blanking on her name, of course, but Payal Patel, who was a student at Brown University. But everybody came together, and it just felt great,
I have to say that an 8 to 10 hour day, an 8 hour day, that is relatively short for a typical film shoot. I've heard of days that go on to like 12, 14, 16, 18 hours.
Well, our setup was different in such that the 4 actors in the movie, and there's only 4 actors in the movie, had to have so many lines memorized and so much effort and so much mental energy. For instance, Adam was listening to Pink Floyd The Wall in his, I guess it's an iPad, his phone, not his phone, but his listening device, and just to put somebody through that, where he chose to listen to that CD over and over again.
That would drive me crazy.
Yeah, that would drive me nuts. And all these, Lawrence and the girls, the actresses, I should say, all getting to this emotional point day in and day out, just emotionally draining. I think if we went 14, 16 hours, it would be really, really insane. I would be a very sick person to put up to that,
I think the difference might be because it's more of a stage play. You don't have to set up as many shots, so that's what takes up time too, because you get the master shot, then you get the close-ups, and then you get the medium shots, and then you get the different takes and the different perspectives, and that takes a lot of time. With a stage play, you don't have as much of that.
Well, it's interesting. The marriage of theater and film in Blood Sugar Seed Ace is interesting. We did take a lot of different shots and different angles and close-ups of each actor, and my editor, once again, co-producer Tim Labonte, he's got such a great way of seeing the finished product in his mind, the movie, and then he will shoot what he needs for the editing process. Mm-hmm. So it really helps me to have my editor, DP, is the same guy, because he's making the movie in his mind as we go. And sometimes Tim came up with shots that were just wild, and even I didn't know what he was doing, but in the editing, he revealed to me, like, oh, this is what I wanted to do all along, and this is, so it was great. And but yeah, we didn't have obstacles like explosions. We didn't have, as they say in the movie, we didn't have dancing bears to triumphant music. We didn't have ridiculous, over-the-top things in our movie that we had to be concerned with. We had to really be concerned with the acting, just the way it looked, the way it felt, and things of that nature. We were really inspired by Long Day's Journey into Night, Katharine Hepburn movie, written by Eugene O'Neill and directed by, Wow, I'm blanking on the names again, but great movie that Eugene O'Neill wrote and Sidney Lumet directed, I believe, back I think in the 40s, early 50s.
You know, if Chris Esper were here, he could say something about that.
Oh yeah, our buddy Chris, he would just rattle off every nuance of that movie. But Sidney Lumet, Making Movies, is a book that I read in preparation for directing this movie, and I really try to focus the best I could on serving the actors and serving the dialogue and just the marriage of the acting with the piece as it was written. Try to pull that off. And you saw the film.
I did see the film.
Yeah, what did you
I saw it at the Brooklyn Coffee Shop, and I thought it was a good film. I liked it. It got really in depth with the characters, and I liked seeing the different points of view. And I do like how when you're showing scenes outside of the film's reality, it's actually in color.
Right.
Normally it would be the other way around.
Yeah, thanks. We went to a different place. With the play within the movie is called Blasphemer, and it's a play that Sid, he's written to kind of twist everything around for a little while, and as Blasphemer erupts into this carnival like atmosphere, you see, man, not only does this movie a roller coaster of the intellect, but Sid's creation of Blasphemer in color is just a vibrant thing, you know, and he's got kabuki makeup on himself and his partner Ace, and they've taken on the character names of Complex and Simplex, and they call Sugar is then called Silence in the play within the movie. So it's another aspect of the piece that I really liked. We shot Blasphemer, the color section, in one day. I think our 6th or 7th day of shooting. It was actually our 6th, I'm pretty sure. And I will give a special nod to Bonnie Griffin, who was our makeup lady for that day, and she just picked up the ball and went with it. She said, "What do you want?" And I had a little photograph of a couple of pro wrestlers, Ultimate Warrior and Sting, you know,
Yeah.
for the obscure-minded. But I showed her this picture. She said, "Okay, so you want something like this?" I said, "Nah, be inspired by it." She said, "You want this, don't you?" You know, but she came up with something that was kind of like a mix of Paul Stanley from Kiss for Ace, and Lawrence was just scary. He came over to me. I was kind of relaxing on the set, and once he got his makeup on, he came over and he had this big Cheshire grin and just scared the heck out of me. So that was quite a day.
I also like the interaction between the characters as he's writing up the story, and then, well, it's like, you don't have a story to tell.
Right. They were basically shooting down. The characters really coming at each other very hard, and that kind of represents the intellect of someone who has a lot of self-defeating nature in them. And like you said, it was actually Sugar who tells Sid. You know, Sid says, "This is my story." Sugar says, "You don't have a story to tell."
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. We're off to the races. You know, we're off to the races with this conflict, and yeah, you know, it's just. I think people will relate to it because everybody in their world has that positive and negative, the yin and yang of their existence. You know, what am I trying to do versus what am I doing versus why am I shooting myself down all the time? And you know,
Where else have you shown the movie besides the coffee shop?
well, we're holding off. The coffee shop screenings in Providence have been strictly for family and friends, as you were invited. We're holding off on a world premiere. We've sent the movie to festivals throughout the world, actually. So we sent one. Entry was into Poland, into a Polish film festival. And we've sent it to Los Angeles and New York. And we're basically in the middle of the process where these festivals are getting back to us in there. It's just, it's, you know, as you know, it's a tough business. Some festivals are going to pass on the movie. They're not going to want to show it at their festivals. Some festivals will want to show it. And we're basically in that process now of waiting for the feedback, and then we'll world debut it at one of these festivals, and then we'll start sharing it. We do have a website, if I could share that.
Absolutely.
It's bloodsugarsidace.com. Bloodsugarsidace.com. No explanation points in the .com, but people can go there if they're so engrossed with the website or with what I'm speaking, they can sponsor a festival entry. We have a little section for that. They can just check out the website, and we'll take it from there. So I think it's one of those things where this movie is going to find its audience, and it's very do-it-yourself, very DIY, as they say.
It's a very nice change of pace because I've actually been to a few film festivals, and a lot of them, they seem to be like a bunch of gangster shoot-'em-up type of films, at least at the film festival that I went to in Quincy.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just, not everyone can be Quentin Tarantino. Shake it up a little.
Yeah, I mean, Tarantino is a big inspiration for me, but I hear what you're saying. The would-be Tarantinos, we're getting a little sick of those.
Yeah, you have to find your own voice instead of emulating someone else's. Unless you have something to add to that, then definitely go for that style, but it has to be your take. You can't be trying to do someone else's take just to do someone else's take.
Yeah, and if anything, my take on A Long Day's Journey into Night by Eugene O'Neill was such a different take. I mean, I think people who watch Blood Sugar Sedace would probably they wouldn't know where to go as far as the influences that I'm coming across with. I'd have to tell them, it was a little bit of Long Day's Journey into Night, a little bit of Wizard of Oz with the color in black and white, Metropolis, which is the first sci-fi movie, me and Tim Labonte really wanted that Metropolis feel as far as the look of the film. So there's a lot of things going on with this, yeah.
Well, I think this has been a very insightful show, and I do hope that Blood Sugar Sedace finds its audience, and I'm sure that it will. I think that you probably have a cult classic in the making. And on that note, I'd like to wrap up this episode of To the Edge, and in our next two installments, we'll actually have an actor and an actress involved, and I'll be talking with them about their roles.
Thank you.
See you next week.